This is Nick at EMRupdate.com. I'm just introducing another Casual Friday session. Today's casual interview is a discussion with Mark Anderson and Robert Gleeman about company viability. What's happening with all the company mergers, the acquisitions? What about the new players entering the market? And how important is the company's stock? These are the questions that Mark and Robert eventually get down to in our little discussion. Join us next Friday for another session.
This is Robert Gleeman. I'm talking on Casual Friday, our casual program, with Mark Anderson. Mark Anderson is with the AC Group. And Mark, I always like to give out your phone number because it is a cell phone number. You're one of the only people I know that answers the phone when people call you. And your cell phone number happens to be 281-413-5572. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And thanks for being with me again here on Casual Friday, Mark. You certainly do look casual today.
Yep, the Hawaiian look today, casual look. Yep.
Well, that's good. Now, you were telling me about what's happening. Why don't you start up again now that we've introduced you and we can see through your disguise. What were you saying before?
Well, we were talking about what kind of subjects should we talk about on these Casual Fridays, and I have a couple optional things that we might want to think about. One, of course, is I'm not sure if we've actually had a good conversation about what hospitals are doing with the change in the Stark Law and what should doctors look for when the hospitals are calling for them. Another subject matter is we just finished our survey on point-of-care clinical decision support. And that's basically what does the software products have when it actually provides knowledge back to the doctors while they're seeing the patient about clinical alerts, decision support, national knowledge bases, reference material. How good are the vendors at actually providing alerts back to the physicians? Another one, of course, is our annual survey that's going to come out in May 19th at the Pepper Conference, and kind of talking about, the changes we've made to that because we've added some new categories in there. So those are just some of the, potential things we could talk about.
Well, those sound like very studious and astute subjects, Mark, but they don't sound down and dirty enough for Casual Friday.
No,
I have one.
Good.
I have one that I think is much more down and dirty, much more roll in the mud, and let's see who can get the dirtiest. And that is from a list that you gave me once, and that is called Company Viability Ratings.
That's a great one.
I think that is down and dirty enough for every one of our readers, from the top to the bottom. There are mergers going on. There are companies going out of business. There are new companies starting up. We have company sponsors starting up anew that we never had before, such as Practice IT, and we also have ECW that is now sponsoring EMR Update. What is going on with viability, and what can you tell us about how to work with it?
Well, I think a couple things for all of the end users, the physicians out there to be worried about is company viability. Will the company and or the product survive over the next 6 months, year, or 5 years? You really want a product, if you're looking at an EMR, that will last you a minimum of 5 years. And therefore, you want to make sure you have a software company that's going to be around, or at least a product, if the software company is bought out, that software company will continue to support. So you start out by looking at how strong is the company. And you can't necessarily look at size of the company because you just look at Mysis, very large company, multi-billion-dollar international company, and they just sold out. Actually, a year ago, they sold out some of their divisions. And then recently, Mysis decided to sell their physician systems, their EMR and practice management, to Allscripts. Just because a company is very large does not mean they're going that product or that company will survive, because there is a lot of consolidation going on. We just noticed that on our surveys, we have 386 EMR vendors in our survey, and 50 of them are no longer in business.
Wow.
That's from a year ago.
Wow.
The difference is 42 new companies have popped up. And most of the time, these new companies are really great-looking software, really nice-looking, easy to use, but they don't have the sophistication in them. They're very nice charting systems. They're very good at allowing the doctor to enter data in, but they don't have any clinical alerts. They don't have the lab interfaces. They may not have the RX Hub and SureScripts, for e-prescribing. So a lot of the new companies look really nice. There's everything behind the product, too.
Well, we have one person on the forum, Dr. Al Borges, who looks at company viability through their stock rating, their stock price of the day.
Yep.
Is that a legitimate thing to do?
It's a good thing to look at, but again, of the 386 vendors, only 9% of them are publicly traded. So it's one indicator, and if you look at some of the vendors, you look at the Allscripts stock, it's really gone down the last couple months, but it may have nothing to do with the viability of the company. It had to do with some other, other things that are going on with the company, and they're turning a lot of that stuff around. But yet you do look at stock prices, because any company, when the stock price goes down, that usually means there's going to be some changes within the organization if it drops too long.
Well, some of my favorite companies are not publicly traded, and they seem to be very stable companies, very popular EMR products. How can we tell about their viability?
That's probably the hardest for the regular physicians, because most of the privately held companies will not release any of their financial information. They won't tell you how much revenue they have. They won't tell you what their expenses are. They'll just say, oh, yeah, we're profitable. Well, there's no way to verify that without actually getting and seeing their books. And you got a lot of the big name companies out there, as you mentioned, eClinical Works, EMDs, Pulse, and a lot of the other vendors are privately held. We really don't know how well their financials are. We have to rely on what they tell us. And it'd be nice if there was some kind of validation system out there. We try to validate as much as we can around looking at their revenue, looking at their how many new clients they have, like Greenway Medical. We've spent a lot of time looking at their financials recently because we have 2 large clients that bought from them. And they really that was our big concern, how strong are their financials. We were able to determine what the revenue stream was, but again, on the expenses, we really don't know how profitable they are over a period of time. But they seem to be strong enough, at least for this client.
Well, that was going to be my next question, Mark, is that I know you do a viability study at the AC Group, and this is your consulting company for EMR, and I was wondering how you did it.
Well, obviously we start with all the publicly traded companies because those are a lot easier to find out what's really going on. We do a lot of interviews with the executives, and it's kind of fun, too, because we get probably 6 or 7 calls from investment companies every week asking us our opinion of the publicly traded companies. And the nice thing is they tell us what they think, too. So we can get a lot of input from multiple sources. On the privately held vendors, we have non-disclosures with a lot of them to be able to get information. So we can't necessarily release their financials, but we have a pretty good indication of what we think their financial viability is. Again, we look at revenue, expenses, profitability. Do they have the capability to add the additional requirements for the CCHIP 2007 and 2008? That requires revenue, excess revenue to go in and add software functionality to your products. So a lot of these vendors, they're doing okay, but they can't come up with an additional $100,000 of development work to meet the 2008 CCHIP requirements. So they struggle with that. And then the question ends up being, are they really financially viable to be able to survive over time? So I think the most important thing, though, is when you're looking at companies, as long as the product can be, the data within your record with that product can be transferred to another vendor. In other words, if they are the CCR, CDA, compliant, where if something does go wrong with the vendor, but I can transfer my demographic information and my clinical data over to a new vendor, it's probably not as important about the company viability. You may lose what you put your money into, but the most important thing is being able to maintain your clinical data that you've entered in. So the biggest risk is you buy from a vendor that cannot transfer the data over, like the old Aircorp converting over, they've got 4 or 5 years worth of AMACOR data in there, and they're having a very hard time getting it converted over to a new system.
Well, these are good words of wisdom to think about, and I hope that if anyone has any questions on company viability, once they've narrowed down their EMR, they will give Mark a call at 281-413-5572. Thank you, Mark Anderson, for being with me again on Casual Friday. I hope you enjoy the day.
Well, thank you very much. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.